everybody, it's Russell from What Drives Us. I'm here at the Toyota All-Wheel Drive event in beautiful Park City, Utah, with my friend, Tom Kretschmann. Tom is, he's in charge of communicating technical details to both dealers and the public, an educator and now an educator and a planner, I guess.
Yes.
I like to think of Tom as just my technical guru. So Tom's going to talk about the different all-wheel drive systems that were deployed in the vehicles that we're driving for the first time, in some cases today. Can you outline, and I'm going to use that little grid, and I'll put that in the video, just so you know.
Yeah.
But can you just outline the basic systems? There's 5?
Oh, yeah, I think it is. I think it is 5, yeah.
And then just the differences so that we know, like, what's the difference between all-wheel drive E and dynamic torque vectoring?
Okay, so the biggest news is that Camry and Avalon now get an all-wheel drive system, and that is the dynamic torque control all-wheel drive system. It's a system that Toyota's used fundamentally for a fairly long time on the RAV4. And the way it works is there's a drive shaft that goes to the back of the car and it's spinning when you're driving. And if it needs all-wheel drive, it engages an electromagnetic coupling, and that can be duty cycled to go up or down up to 50% power to the rear. So that system, the drive shaft will be turning, there's an electromagnetic clutch, and that electromagnetic clutch allows us to turn up or down the all-wheel drive power to the rear from about 10 to 50% of the engine power as needed. The nice thing about it is, from a driver's standpoint, you don't have to think about it. The computers are going to sort out whether or not the rear wheels need power. And it doesn't need to see wheel slippage necessarily in order to engage that rear axle. Sometimes when you're driving on a front drive vehicle, you're asking a lot of those front 2 contact patches.
Sure.
They not only have to pull the car down the road, but they have to turn the car. So in some situations, it's advantageous to take some of the work, put it to the rear of the car, have the rear tires push the car while the fronts turn. That can be done even on dry pavement.
Which makes the car more stable,
right,
better to drive, and then of course obviously in adverse weather conditions it helps enormously because you're not counting on just those 2 pressure points,
right,
to not slip.
And of course in this kind of condition, all-wheel drive, it helps you get going. That's the main reason we've got these on the cars now, is in these conditions people need to be able to get moving without a whole lot of slippage or drama.
So on Camry and Avalon, that prop, I guess, shaft, is spinning all the time.
Right.
There's a coupler in the back that electromagnetically either couples it to the rear differential or not. Now, the wheels aren't independent, but the traction control sort of fills in for that?
Right. So what happens is the power is delivered to the rear axle, and it's an open differential. So if one wheel begins to slip a little bit, the computers will see that, and it will apply the brake, pulse the brake a little bit to slow that wheel down and direct the power to the other side. Always sorting out the power so that you have the traction that you need. Okay.
Now, tuning in this, do you guys allow for a little bit of slippage so it's a little more, dare I say, I mean, I hate to say this because I don't mean it in a negative sense, but like realistic way of driving?
Yeah.
Because people expect cars to slip, even though it's not helping anything.
Well, there's always a trade-off. In these conditions, you need to let the tires slip a little bit to help get you going. If we immediately stop any slippage whatsoever, you're killing power, and it can feel as if it's taking forever to get going. So what we do is we allow for some slippage to not only kind of alert you, oh, I'm on a slippery condition, but mainly because the little bit of slippage actually helps build your forward momentum. Oh. So that's part of the...
So it's not all just driver's experience, it's actually helpful.
Right.
Okay, so that's the system in Camry and Avalon. Now, there's a different system in RAV.
Well, there's 2 systems in RAV. So some of the RAVs get the system that is in Camry and Avalon.
Okay.
But when you get to the Platinum, oh boy, now I'm going to have to
RAV remember. Hybrid is the difference, isn't it?
Hybrid is different, but we also have a torque vectoring system on the TRD Off-Road, the Adventure, and the... I'm trying to remember now.
Check your screen. If Tom doesn't remember everything perfectly, we'll have the list.
It's, I believe, the Limited.
Yeah.
But on those trims, we have a similar situation, but there are differences. So, for example, that drive shaft, instead of spinning all the time, There are clutches, front and rear,
Front and rear, okay.
and those are what we call dog clutches. They're not like a slipper clutch that's in our electromagnetic clutch system on the other system we just talked about. Dog clutches literally clutch together like gears. There's no slippage. So the idea here is that when you don't need all-wheel drive, you're not turning anything. That in turn helps your fuel economy and makes the vehicle a little bit more efficient. If you do need the all-wheel drive, it takes no time to lock those clutches up. But the other thing is, on that RAV and on the Highlander as well, we have torque vectoring. Now, what that does is once the power gets to that rear axle, instead of just powering the car forward and if there's slippage, we apply brakes, the torque vectoring system has a set of clutches for left and right. And those clutches allow the power to be diverted one side or the other, or equally on both sides, to aid in traction, but also to give the car a little bit of push one way or the other to help keep the car on your intended steer line. Right.
Because it certainly in slippery conditions, you kind of want something that's going to give it a little power. Braking is the thing that you don't want. That'll just continue to slide. Sometimes you power through things, no?
Well, that's true, but the other thing is that with this system, it is allowing the car to push itself. For example, if you're going through a turn, think about where the weight on the wheels is. If you're going through a turn, the outside wheels have a little bit more weight than the inside. If they have more weight on them, they generally have a little bit more traction.
Sure.
So with this torque vectoring system, the wheels that have a little bit more weight, and again, the vectoring is only happening on the rear axle, doesn't happen up front.
Okay.
It can put more torque to the outside rear. And as such, again, the fronts are trying to turn you. If we change who's doing the work and that outside rear is helping push, it helps the fronts track the line that you intend to go. And the whole idea is that it gives you more confidence when driving.
Sure. Sure. Because your car's slipping and sliding less, and that's
Right.
a good thing for everybody.
Exactly.
Unless you're a drifter, and you're not a drifter. Well, maybe you are, but that's not what we're talking about. So the final system, if I'm remembering everything right, is the Prius system. That's AWD-E.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different from these other ones?
So, well, there's actually two hybrid all-wheel drive systems.
Just to make it easy.
Of course. So the all-wheel drive, like this right here, we're standing in front of a Highlander hybrid. So the all-wheel drive E on the Prius and the one here that's on this Highlander, in essence, are very, very similar. Instead of having a drive shaft, a mechanical connection that delivers power to the rear wheels, in this case, we've eliminated that all completely. And we've replaced it with, in the case of the Highlander and then the RAV, a motor generator. So it's an electric motor that can drive the rear wheels as needed, and then when you apply the brakes or you lift throttle, it can also generate electricity to recharge the high voltage battery on board. The difference between Highlander and RAV and the Prius is that the Highlander and RAV, that motor can work at any vehicle speed. In fact, it always works from a stop when you accelerate up to about 15 miles an hour just to aid in getting you going. On Prius, though, it works a little different. So the Prius rear motor is not a motor generator. It's just a motor, and it uses inductive magnets. It's an induction motor. The reason we did that is Prius, its whole reason for being is efficiency. Everything is maximized for efficiency. So we eliminate the permanent magnets because when it's not in use, permanent magnets cause a little bit of drag. Now in a vehicle like this, it's not as big a deal because we're using that motor as a generator when it's not in use. But in the Prius, they determined, the engineers, who know more than I do, determined that, you know what, an inductive motor would be more efficient. It's lighter, we don't need as much power there. So in the Prius, up to 6 miles an hour, it will always engage and provide power to the rear wheels. Then, if it detects slippage or sees a reason to engage that rear motor, it will engage up to 43 miles an hour. Above that, it won't. But again, think about those conditions. If you're in slippery conditions, the last thing you tend to do is stand on the throttle above 40 miles an hour, you know?
Let's hope not.
But the reality is, it's a remarkably efficient and effective system. I remember the first time I drove it in snow, I'm like, oh, you know, It's a Prius. It's not going to do it. And then I got in it. I drove up a snowy hill, and it didn't even blink. I'm like, this is incredible. That little bit of push from the rear changed the whole dynamic of the car.
Right.
Especially in climate conditions like this, that's when you need it, and it's remarkably good.
Is it a physical limitation, the top speed, the 43 miles per hour? Or is it just what the engineers calculated because of the kind of motor, because it's a Prius, to do that, that would be the best system?
They, as I understand it, they told us that that speed was chosen to maximize efficiency, to balance the efficiency with the effectiveness. When do you need this torque the most? And it's at those lower speeds when you're trying to get up and rolling. And anytime it sees slippage on those lower speeds. So that's what they were trying to do. They found that perfect balance of maintaining the efficiency without killing the traction.
I think that's a great outline of a very complex set of variables with these different all-wheel drive systems. Is there anything else that you want to toss in?
Well, you know,
anything I forgot?
The only thing is, let me think here. Well, the one nice thing about these systems, especially if you've just moved to an area that now all of a sudden, you know, maybe you lived in Florida for years and now for whatever reason, now you're in the Dakotas or you're in a place like this. You're here in Utah.
Done something wrong and you're being punished. Is that?
I don't know.
Just
whatever.
kidding. Just kidding, North Dakota.
But, you know, you find yourself now in a snowy climate and you're like, wow, I think I need all-wheel drive. I don't know anything about it. Well, the beautiful thing about these systems is that they're fully automatic. This isn't the old school days where you had to like stop the vehicle, get out, lock the hubs, put it in. None of that's happening. It's fully automatic. It does it for you. You don't have to think about it. And in vehicles like this hybrid Highlander, there's even a trail mode. So you don't even have to sacrifice, you know, I have a hybrid. Do I take it off-road? This can go moderately off-road. I mean, we're not going to go the Rubicon Trail, but, you know, you want to go to that campsite? Absolutely, can do it. And even with the torque vectoring systems on the Highlander and the RAV, you have other options like terrain select. And that all that's doing is it's tailoring all this all-wheel drive and traction management to work best under the conditions you're in. So if you're on rock or you're in mud or snow or something like that, you can change these things to tailor the system, and it's all done for you. It's so seamless.
That's a huge thing because there's enough in cars right now that we need to keep track of on our touch screens, on our buttons, on our steering wheels, on the central display. We need to know, you know, we've got all this stuff. So something that helps keep you safer, helps make driving more fun, that totally minds its own stuff, takes care of everything. Other than maybe a trail mode in some, like in the Highlander and whatnot, in most of the other cars, in Corolla or Camry and Avalon, it's all automatic. It's all within microseconds because the computer's making the decisions, deciding what to do, and applying the power.
And that's the beautiful thing about the Avalon and Camry is that not only is it an all-wheel drive system that improves your traction in conditions like this, but there's no downside. The packaging of the car, there's nothing you're losing in trunk space, rear seat space, anything like that. The whole platform was designed in a manner that you could put this in there. And it has been put in, and to a customer that's interested in a Camry, they're not losing anything. It's a Camry, plus you have the added traction.
And it's not old school traction control either. This is far more, I mean, we've gone generations in complexity here with the way the sensors work. So it's not a matter of, oh, I don't want one of those ding-dang traction control things, because this one you actually do want.
Well, yeah, it works so seamlessly. A lot of times it's intervening and you don't even realize it. And all it does is it gives you more confidence. It makes you feel more sure-footed. I know growing up, we were talking earlier, the cars that we used to drive back in the 70s, 80s, they had nothing. And when the snow fell, all of a sudden you had to change every way you drove. With these new modern cars, what they're doing is they're letting you focus more on just the simple fact of driving without having to change a whole lot. Yeah, you're going to want to, obviously, when the weather's lousy, you're going to want to throttle down and take it easy, but you can feel confident that if anything happens and you need to step on the brakes or you need to get going through an intersection, these systems are in place, the car's just going to work, and
just
that's
gonna
what it's
do
all going to. That's what it's going to do.
It's beautiful. Well, Tom, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your
Yep.
time. Thanks all of you for watching another episode. Until next time, drive carefully.